Well, that was very loud, and it makes sense. That's what you call over. What did you did you make sure it hit the heart first, but it ended up doing something with another organ, which helps generate a lot of fire. And if you don't release that fire and somebody tries to tell you that you're doing something inappropriate or behaving in an inappropriate manner, that it ends up manifesting in even more compounded physical sickness. And then they end up pumping you full of more drugs, and then you end up having more problems. And if you don't take the drugs, you understand that you are going to have to respond and react in ways, including when you're being biophysiologically assaulted. And just so you know, right before I found those articles, my clitoris was in serious pain, right? And at this point in time, even if you did talk about it for a while, like I did, and even if you understand biophysiologically how they end up using your body and they engage you in acts of illegal coinage and how they punish you with actual physical pain, including genital torture, when you don't respond in a way that makes them feel gratified, and that can mean any number of things, then you experience physical pain, including in your genitals, right? So all of those things happen. And if you're talking to a reasonable person and a woman tells you that she's in genital pain at that time and that she understands that the night before she found out information about her life that had been lost for a very long period of time, and that means that there might be people who used to support her that might actually still be looking for her and she wants to connect with them, and then all of a sudden she wakes up the next morning and again she's told, actually it's not your turn, all that was actually for this other person. You're supposed to give that to this other person. And by the way, you're not that person. You're actually this, which is even more, even more catastrophized than who she really is and what actually happened to her. But, something's on the line. Do you want to be able to get asylum or not? There's no reason for me to claim asylum under these terms. Or is there? In 2018, I received a driver's license in the state of Texas. It was my second effort. I had to leave Houston, where I was originally scheduled earlier in the year to get my driver's license, go to Austin, and then after Austin, go to Dallas. And then after Dallas, I was in Fort Worth, and I would have been able to get a driver's license. So I signed up. Some point, very shortly after getting my driver's license, which it was all this strange stuff that happened that day. They made the original driver's license and they said, oops, we put the wrong address on it. We're going to have to take another picture and make another one. So it was actually my second Texas driver's license that was issued on the same day. And it ended up getting stolen. And I had to go through all of this effort to try to get a new one. I got a new one right here. But let me tell you something. After I moved into the address and I had to get a new birth certificate and then I had to get a new this and that, all that stuff. I go down to the Department of Public Safety and I'm early and I'm sitting there and I'm in horrible pain. And I'm like, what is that? And they're like, we're harvesting your eggs. And I'm like, what? I'm sitting on the sidewalk outside of the building where I'm supposed to get my driver's license. And they're like, yeah, we're harvesting your eggs. I don't understand. Why are you doing that? Well, do you want your driver's license or not? I don't even understand how you can do that. And then I start thinking, okay, don't be freaked out. Is it actually, and I was like, oh, wait, you mean you did this? Is this what you're doing? Then I get inside. And while I'm inside, there's this beautiful young woman that's sitting in front of me. I didn't really think much about it until all of a sudden, they're like, you're next. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then they're like, no, not you. And then the beautiful young woman in front of me gets the number called and she ends up going. And she's literally in line right before me. And I'm like, did you give my eggs to her? And they're like, yeah, we did. And I'm like, whoa, why would you give my eggs to her? She fits a very different demographic, and she's younger than me. She has her own eggs. Why would you harvest my eggs and give me to another woman that has a different demographic and that's younger than me? It was one of those things. Well, how do you believe? Well, you go up there and I say to the guys, I said, wow, I can see on the screen that every single license and every ID card that's been issued with my identity information is coming up on the screen. I'm like, can you print that out so I can get a copy of the contract numbers? No, we can't do that. Well, can you give me information about the past numbers on my ID cards and the contract numbers so that I could check it for fraud? No, we can't do that. Okay. There were eight. I got eight. This is my eighth one, right? Here's the problem. I got back and I'm there and I'm in pain. And then I find that the day that my driver's license was double issued in Fort Worth was the day of a major, major, major deal for the Dallas Police and Fire pension system. Were those my eggs, boys and girls? Did you harvest my eggs through that beautiful brown-skinned woman in front of me for your pension system? Yes, you did. And you used it to launder money as kickbacks based on all kinds of deals set up on the hedging strategies everybody else sets up on the federal appropriations process, as opposed to actually dealing with actual reconciliation and actual accountability and actual verification that the Constitution is applied and upheld in the process of dealing with federal budgeting. Right? Now, what do you give as compensation to a woman like me who's been subjected to this? And now I have evidence that this goes all the way back to when I was a minor, below the age of consent, and before I was even capable of ovulating, right? But more than that, literally and practically, there's these cycles that happen, and we're in a very important cycle. You've spent 2 years actively, literally identifying what you have done to me in the process of isolating me and giving me nobody to talk to and subjecting me to all kinds of torture and slander, while literally my people, the people I used to know, the people I engaged with, even the very few moments I might actually have human contact, you take that and you create this whole elaborate scheme. And it's usually laundered through the State Department, like literally through the State Department, right? And part of being able to launder it through the State Department is you get to successfully kick it back to people contracting through the Department of Defense. And so, you know, when you contact the Judiciary Committee and you say, hey, I've got information about what you just put out regarding $500 million that has been unaccounted for in the DOD budget. And then all I end up getting told is, well, I'm going to refer you to the senior senator. I'm going to refer you to the senator in your state. And I spent all of these years being treated like this. You know what it sounds like? My original allegations that people were defrauding the federal government in order to kick it back to local deals they set up, including in connection with state offices they held before they went to Washington, D.C. I know. I'm probably a refugee woman in somebody's lexicon, and I have no consumer history. I have no rental or lease history. My job record looks very spotty. I can't pay taxes. I owe $12 in taxes, even though I was supposed to get a $1,200 savings bond. I owe $12 in taxes, and my credit is so bad they will not even let me use my actual income and my actual debit credit card to literally pay the taxes. They won't let me pay the taxes. That's how desperate I am. And yet, what would I have given back to the community if I had been able to? Well, I made this PowerPoint presentation. I do these things, right? Some people do these things. They make these PowerPoint presentations. And it's 24 slides. And I'm going to tell you right now, the kind of inflection I'm speaking with now is completely different than it was when I made it, right? Because when I made this, it was with an understanding that people who were being exploited needed to be protected. But you want me Latina, I think. Am I supposed to be Latina? Or am I like, I'm Slav Nafta, aren't I? That's what I just found this today. It makes sense. I'm Slav Nafta, right? Come on. We already dealt with Petromed. That's out of the picture now. So we're Slav Nafta, right? I mean, you just ended up seizing all those assets through OFAC again, and you told me my name's not on the list. So this is some sort of combination you've made, because obviously somebody's due restitution. And you might be right. And the people that unfortunately are on the hook for that restitution are any attorney or judge in the state of Texas that engaged in massive crime up to and including acts of human trafficking, and up to and including acts that actually violate the law of war when it comes to people who are identified as having a mental health issue or even a mental illness. I have this 24-page PowerPoint presentation that I had in an original form. The outline was completed by late October, early November of 2018. And by the time I was indoors and I put it into this specific kind of a PowerPoint presentation, I had talked to somebody I was referred to who I was told was very interested in making sure people got their healthcare needs taken care of. And I gave him an outline with my resume. And you're making a deal on that today. Somebody right now today is making a deal on that outline I gave to him, but he never got back to me. And all kinds of deals have been made on that outline I gave to him, even though he never got back to me. It's 24 slides. It's called Legal, Community, and Representation for Texas Mental Health Services. Mental wellness is not a risk. I know, it's kind of arrogant, right? Requirements regarding emergency mental health services in Texas. Legal recourse per terms of orders of protective custody. State Bar of Texas information concerning mental health detentions. Child abuse and mental health services. Texas Health and Safety Code regarding risk representative. Legal requirements regarding emergency detention. Sections under the Texas Mental Health Code, second page. Contracts in mental health, relevant legal citations, legal abuses to guard against, impact of diagnosis on intellectual property rights, second page, third page, HIPAA and the Nuremberg Code, Social Security and securities laws, domicile and personal property, redress for wrongdoing, patients' rights are not underwriting, medication values, second page on medication, mental competence and accountability. See, in Texas, there's very specific laws regarding contracts and mental competence. If you knowingly and willingly intentionally engage people in efforts to deceive and defraud them so that you can traffic them for years while you attempt to extort them into cooperating with crime, is this an issue of criminal or clinical concern? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you do not affect a different outcome, and in the course of doing, you are cruel, you are unusual, you do not apply habeas corpus relief, you do not engage in respect for due process, you do the same thing over and over again, and you actively recruit people to co-conspire with you to do the same thing over and over again. Is this a clinical or a criminal matter? I contend, by the letter of the law, it's a criminal matter. That's what we're all owed. If you said you were upholding the law and that there were certain things you needed to do your job, and you took things from other people because you said you needed them to do your job, and you didn't do your job, but instead broke the law, by the letter of the law, you're the criminal. I know the law when it comes to people alleged to have a mental health problem. Nothing close to that has been applied, especially in regards to minors in the state of Texas, since I've been in the state of Texas. And the most egregious violators are people that claim they're licensed and authorized to practice law. This was not for your risk representatives to hedge on. This was for the lawyers and the judges who already know the law. We're over we're actually going on 3 years. We're going on 3 years. In October, it'll be 3 years since I originally composed this. I've only presented one copy of this to one person. How is it that somebody right now today is running a huge transaction on it? Let me tell you something. If you were a person and you're applying for asylum because you were forced sterilized, this is what you're owed. You're not owed somebody else being misrepresented as if they're with you in a characterization that's not going to get you justice. How many of these people seeking asylum are themselves lawyers or judges, or rather would have been lawyers and judges if they weren't trafficked for years. So somebody else that had a political disagreement or that wanted them to be less high maintenance compensation decided to take what they did and claim it as their own. Right? I'm certain that a woman that's sterilized can be available for in home comfort and aid in a manner that's less risky than a woman who's not forced sterilized. I'm sure the healthcare cost associated with contraception and maybe even considerations of pregnancy termination, if that should come up, well, I'm certain those medical costs are already going to be lower because those kind of treatment options wouldn't be on the table, would they? But how extreme does her duress have to get in order for her to get the right clinical diagnosis to correlate with the prescription coverage you're trying to use as part of your kickback scheme? That's a criminal issue, right? Yes, it is. You're not going to be able to do that. What you need is right here.